Welcome to the Big Ten in 10. I'm Vaughn Delzell alongside Robbie Hunnell. And in the last week of Big Ten action, there were what I thought a lot of upsets, Robbie. Maryland beating Iowa, Nebraska, Northwestern outlasting Illinois and OT, and Minnesota came back from beyond the grave to beat Penn State. So it was a pretty fun week, Robbie. But guess what? We can do it again. So let me ask you, as we enter the final days of January, focusing on one team in the conference, what does that team need to do to build on or fix as we inch closer to March?
Yeah, I'll go with Wisconsin, Vaughn. And I think that with this Badger team, they've gotten off to such a great start. They're 16-4 overall. They're 8-1 in the Big Ten. I love their depth. You know, we've talked so much about how the returning core mixed with John Blackwell and AJ Storr has been such a winning recipe for Greg Gard. But the last two games, I've seen a different defensive mindset or focus, you could say. And I know after the win against Indiana last week, Greg Gard was not pleased about the fact that they gave up 79 points to a Hoosier team that at times has had trouble scoring, especially on the road. So their offense has covered up a lot of their defensive mistakes, or I guess it's hidden some of those blemishes that they've had defensively. But the win at Minnesota, it's they give up 59 points. The win over Michigan State, the Spartans get 66. So the defensive side of the basketball is where they got to keep making strides. I love the way they score, but if they want to be the team with maybe the highest ceiling possible that Wisconsin can be, it's going to be the defensive side of the ball. I know that you have liked Maryland for a long time, and that liking is starting to really pay off. What do you think about the Maryland Terrapins?
Yeah, I think they had the biggest week of any Big Ten team, as beating Iowa on the road and crushing Nebraska at home. They've won 4 of their last 7. And in the 3 losses, they've lost to Minnesota, Northwestern, Michigan State by a combined 8 points. So this team, I feel like, is starting to find their rhythm. And it's a team that I disrespected last week in my power rankings on NBC Sports. I had them number 12 last week. I had them number 6 entering this week. And their defense, Robbie, has been elite. 7th in defensive efficiency, 7th in 2-point defense. They own almost 20% defensive turnover percentage. So they do all that well. But what they really need to do better is start hitting threes. They're ranking bottom 50 in the country from deep, below 30%. And as you know, it's hard to win on road and neutral courts. They're 3-6 this year. So can they build off that road Iowa win? They got to go to Michigan State with a week off. So I'm definitely looking at that game. But more consistency away from home and reliable three-point shooting are what Maryland needs moving forward. But I think they could be a tournament team. Any other teams that are on your radar over the next month?
Yeah, I mean, the Fighting Illini, they had a very, I guess you could say, up and down week, a tough emotional overtime loss at Northwestern, and then kind of a little bit of a slog, maybe a little bit of an emotional letdown against Indiana, but they found a way to win. And I think that is such a big part of being successful in this league is, can you win games when you're not at your best? And I think with Terrence Shannon, they're still trying to figure out how to reintegrate him into what they were doing. A lot of talent there. You look at their roster, whether it's Coleman Hawkins, Quincy Guerrier, Ty Rogers, Marcus Damask, have to talk about him. He's been phenomenal. But for the Illini, you got to make some layups. They have been abysmal on shots around the basket, whether that was the Northwestern game where I think they were 13 of 33 on shots at the rim, and it was not good again against Indiana, like 9 of 20. So a lot of missed layups. The free throw shooting was not great against Indiana. I still think that Illinois can be a factor in the league title race, but certainly kind of getting Shannon back up to speed. And then I think a little bit more ball movement could help the Illini as well. Who else do you have your eye on?
I'm still targeting those Iowa Hawkeyes. They've been a pesky team, Robbie. All right, they're still playing at one of the quickest tempos in the country, fast in the Big Ten, top 15. But I've been noticing the three-point defense has improved tremendously for Iowa. Only 29% allowed to opponents. They're still hitting their threes at 36%. They don't have quite the names they've had in the past. Obviously, Patrick McCaffrey is the guy's name that rings bells in the past few seasons. But that home loss to Maryland was a bad one for Iowa. But luckily for them, they're projected favorites in their next 4 games, which sets a pretty nice for a winning streak after beating Michigan in a must-win game, what I thought. A lot of the questions I have about this team, I think, will be answered in a 4-game stretch in February. They play Maryland, Wisconsin, Michigan State, and Illinois. So whether they're guarding the three-point line, we'll continue to see if that is. They're not guarding the paint. Speaking about paint play, Iowa's defense 57% allowed from 2-point range. So these are the things they need to fix moving forward. But I look at their schedule, and I say in mid-February, we'll know exactly who the Iowa Hawkeyes are. I did want to ask you about a game that you're going to be calling because Peacock has a doubleheader on Tuesday night. Illinois and Ohio State plays. Coverage starts at 6:30 for that. But you got Michigan State. That game tips off at 9 o'clock Eastern. What are you looking at between this matchup and maybe one of the two teams moving forward?
Well, for Michigan, I think with any road game, you have to say, how are they going to play without Doug McDaniel? Because his usage is so high in the home games that he does play in that you have to kind of shift and play a totally different way in the road games when he doesn't play. So, it's a guy that's ball dominant. The ball's in his hands often. And, Olivier Kamwa, Terrence Williams, those guys are going to have to really step up and be more playmakers when McDaniel's not on the floor. For Michigan State, can they kind of find some stops? That they just could not guard the Badgers. And look, there's a lot of teams that aren't going to be able to stop that Wisconsin offense because it's as high powered as we have seen under Greg Gard. But I think getting back to some of their defensive basics, getting stops, that allows them to run. That's what Tom Izzo is about. And certainly the rebounding has got to be better. They have not been a good defensive rebounding team this year. They were not good at it again against Wisconsin for the second time this season, and that loss earlier in the week. So Michigan, not a great rebounding team themselves. The Spartans have got to get it done on the glass so they can get out and run.
Yeah, Michigan bottom 30 in defensive rebounding this season. 3 straight losses by double digits. Certain to be a double-digit underdog probably at Michigan State in that rivalry game. But things are not looking good for the Wolverines, Robbie. I have them as the last-ranked team in the Big Ten power rankings. Last question for you. Is it too late to believe in Michigan State? I have them ranked number 4 in the Big Ten. Do you agree with that?
I don't think it's too late. I think their schedule sets up pretty favorably here for them to go on a run and put some wins together. You think about Michigan at home, Maryland at home, Minnesota away, and then you get a shot at Illinois back in East Lansing as well. So you look at their next 4 games, I think it's pretty winnable. And then you kind of stretch that out even further. You're talking about at Penn State, at Michigan, Iowa at home, Ohio State at home. That's like 8 games where you feel pretty good about Michigan State and what they're doing. And if they can really string some good performances together, I think that the narrative is different. I still think they're an NCAA tournament team. They're just not going to reach the place that we thought in the preseason where they were looked at as a top 5 team nationally.
Yeah, well put. I never expected them to live up to that expectations, but certainly being one of the best teams in the Big Ten, I think that's possible for the Spartans. And they'll prove it at the game you're calling, Robbie. So enjoy the game. This was the Big Ten in 10. I'm Vaughn Delzell, and that was Robbie Hummel. Enjoy all the Big Ten action this week.